I was called Lillian Moore, the daughter of a university department head who built her reputation on absolute fairness. At home she once cared for me deeply, countless medical notes, strict diets, sleepless nights during my childhood illnesses. But at the university, I became a problem she tried to erase. To avoid favoritism rumors, she treated me harsher than anyone else. Scholarships I earned were reassigned. Competition spots I won were quietly handed to others. Every time she said the same thing: if people think I helped you, my integrity is finished. And I kept swallowing it, believing it was temporary. Then came the campus blood donation drive. My mother insisted I participate like everyone else. I showed her my medical file, severe anemia, repeated fainting history, but she barely looked. Everyone is donating. You will set an example. I remember sitting in the donation bus under bright white lights. A nurse named Karen Lewis barely glanced at my condition before tightening the strap on my arm. Only 100 milliliters and you're already struggling, she said coldly. Others donate 400 without drama. I felt the world tilt as dizziness swallowed my vision. I tried to pull away, but my wrist was held down firmly. My mother stood nearby, watching with an expression I couldn't read anymore. Don't embarrass me, Lillian, she said. Finish it. I wanted to explain that something was wrong, that my body was failing, but my voice wouldn't come out properly. The room felt further and further away, like I was sinking underwater. The second bag was already being prepared when my body stopped responding properly. I remember the cold panic of realizing I couldn't even lift my head. My vision fractured into dark spots, and my heartbeat felt uneven, distant. Karen clicked her tongue impatiently. She's exaggerating. I've seen this act before. I'm not, I tried to say, but it came out as a whisper. My mother's face hardened. Stop this behavior. Everyone is watching. Then everything collapsed. I hit the floor, or maybe the world hit me first, I don't know. The sounds turned hollow, like they were coming from another building. I remember hearing someone say I was just fainting for attention. Karen didn't stop the procedure immediately. Even as I lay motionless, she adjusted the needle again, muttering that I was making things difficult. There was frustration in her movements, not concern. My mother's voice followed me even as I lost awareness. She always does this when things don't go her way. That sentence broke something inside me, not pain, something heavier. Like being erased while still conscious enough to feel it happening. And then there was nothing. Not sleep. Not darkness. Just absence. I saw myself from above. My body lay still on the floor beside the donation chair, arm marked with bruises and puncture traces. People moved around me like I was an inconvenience rather than a person. Someone suggested I was acting. Someone else laughed nervously, saying I always caused scenes. My mother didn't rush to me. She didn't panic. She just stood there, disappointed. She's doing this to avoid responsibility, she said quietly. Don't let her disrupt the process. Even after I stopped moving, the donation continued for others. Karen sighed and said, should we just finish her record anyway? The words didn't make sense at first. Finish what record? I wasn't participating anymore, I wasn't even there anymore in the way they thought. But they treated my body like paperwork. Later, when someone finally noticed something was wrong, it was too late. The paramedics arrived, and the atmosphere changed, but not into urgency. Into confusion. Who is responsible for this student? One of them asked. My mother stepped forward without hesitation. I am. She's just being dramatic. I wanted to scream that I wasn't dramatic. That I wasn't even alive to be anything anymore. But no one heard me. And that was when I understood something terrifying. They could look straight at my death and still call it behavior. The paramedics moved quickly once they confirmed I wasn't responding, but their urgency felt different from what people imagine in emergencies. It wasn't panic, it was procedure. One of them checked my pulse again, then looked up with a sharp expression. How long has she been like this? No one answered immediately. Karen stepped back, adjusting her gloves as if distancing herself from the scene physically could also distance her from responsibility. She was uncooperative during donation. My mother's voice cut in, steady and controlled. My daughter has a history of exaggerating symptoms. She does this when she doesn't want to follow instructions. A pause. The paramedic didn't look convinced. We still need her medical history. Severe anemia and blood donation can be dangerous. My mother nodded once, too quickly. She's always been weak. But she's dramatic. Dramatic. That word followed me like a shadow even after I stopped breathing. Behind them, students gathered, whispering. Some recorded. Some stared. Most were trying to understand what they were supposed to feel. Sympathy was competing with authority, and authority was winning. She was fine earlier, someone said. Maybe she collapsed on purpose. No one wanted to be the person who misunderstood. And so they chose the easier belief. Inside the university clinic office, the atmosphere shifted into quiet damage control. My body had been moved away, and the blood donation drive continued as if it had only been a temporary interruption. Curtains were drawn. Doors were closed. Voices lowered, not out of respect, but strategy. A staff meeting began almost immediately. What exactly happened? The department dean asked. My mother stood at the front, composed again. She refused to cooperate. She has a long history of resisting responsibility when under pressure. Karen added quickly, she claimed medical issues but didn't provide proper verification at the time. That wasn't true. I had shown my medical file. But truth depends on who is speaking first. A junior staff member hesitated. She looked unconscious. Karen shook her head. Some students faint for attention. It's not uncommon. My mother didn't correct her. She didn't need to. Instead, she said, we should keep this contained. If this becomes a scandal, it will damage the department and the university's reputation. That word again, reputation. It always stood where I should have been. Forms were drafted. Initial statements began forming even before facts were confirmed. Unexpected medical incident. Student collapse during voluntary activity. Words chosen not to describe reality, but to survive it. By the time my body reached the hospital, my name had already started disappearing from the story. I was no longer a person in the reports, just a student case. Doctors performed checks quietly, their expressions changing as they reviewed my history. Severe iron deficiency. Prior fainting episodes. Clear medical warnings. One of them frowned. She should never have been in a blood donation environment. That sentence should have changed everything. It didn't. Because outside the room, conversations were already being rewritten. Karen gave her statement first. She described me as emotionally unstable, non-compliant, and possibly exaggerating symptoms under academic pressure. Each phrase softened her responsibility while hardening mine. My mother reinforced it without raising her voice. Lillian struggles with discipline. I had hoped this experience would teach her responsibility. No one mentioned the medical certificate I had shown. No one mentioned my warning. Inside the hospital room, a nurse quietly placed my personal belongings into a bag. My phone, my student ID, my watch. And in that moment, I wasn't just gone. I was being organized. Filed away into something easier to forget. But somewhere in the system, buried under signatures and timestamps, truth had already begun to leave fingerprints. The university's official response came faster than reality could catch up. By morning, a draft statement was already circulating through internal offices. It described the incident as a sudden medical collapse during a voluntary campus activity. My name was reduced to initials. My condition was reduced to a footnote. No mention of ignored warnings. No mention of coercion. No mention of repeated medical refusals. Only unexpected event. In the dean's office, printers kept running as revisions were made in real time. Every version became smoother, cleaner, less human. My mother sat in the meeting room like a statue made of responsibility. When asked whether she had forced me to participate, she answered calmly. I encouraged her to set an example. I never forced her. Karen nodded beside her. She agreed to participate. A lie becomes easier to accept when two people repeat it. Outside, students were already talking. Not about facts, about interpretations. She was the director's daughter, right? Maybe she wanted attention. I heard she refused the needle first. No one wanted to be wrong after speaking first. And so the story hardened in the wrong direction. My body was still in the hospital when the first online posts appeared. A blurry photo. A caption. A question, did someone faint at the blood drive today? Within hours, comments multiplied. She always looked weak anyway. People fake fainting all the time. I heard she caused a scene because her mom didn't give her special treatment. My identity was being reconstructed by strangers who had never seen me breathe. At the same time, inside the administration building, my mother reviewed paperwork. One document caught her attention, a medical exemption form I had submitted earlier. Karen stood beside her. I didn't think it was valid. Students sometimes submit those to avoid participation. My mother didn't react immediately. Then she signed the incident summary. She did not mark it as coerced. She marked it as student participation issue. That small choice changed everything that came after. Because paperwork doesn't describe truth. It replaces it. That evening, the university held a closed review meeting. I was not there. My voice was not there. Only interpretations of me were present. A senior administrator spoke first. We need clarity. Did the student consent or not? Karen answered quickly. She agreed verbally. My medical records were not read aloud. My warnings were not mentioned. My mother spoke last. She has always struggled with responsibility, she said. I hoped this would teach her discipline. I never intended harm. No one challenged her. Because intent is easier to defend than outcome. A junior staff member hesitated. But she had severe anemia. The room went quiet for half a second too long. Then the dean responded carefully, we will note it for future guidelines. Not accountability. Guidelines. As if what happened to me was just an oversight in procedure, not a collapse of care. Outside the building, the wind moved through empty corridors. And somewhere in the system, my case was already being reshaped into something safe enough to file away. By the next morning, the university had already shifted from confusion to control. The official narrative was almost complete. It described my collapse as a rare medical reaction during voluntary participation. Every sentence was carefully designed to avoid responsibility without sounding defensive. My name appeared only once in the internal document. And even then, it felt replaceable. In the administrative office, my mother reviewed the final draft. Her expression didn't show relief, only focus, like someone adjusting a report before submission. Karen stood beside her, uneasy but silent. A staff member asked, should we include the medical exemption? My mother answered without hesitation. It was not properly validated at the time. That wasn't true. But it was cleaner than the truth. Outside, students were returning to normal life. Classes resumed. Conversations shifted. My absence became background noise. Some said I had collapsed from stress. Others said I couldn't handle pressure. No one said I had been ignored. Because that version required responsibility. And responsibility was something the system kept avoiding. My personal effects were returned in a sealed plastic bag. Phone, ID, watch. Everything arranged neatly, as if order could soften what happened. The nurse handing it over avoided eye contact. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But it wasn't clear what she was apologizing for. At the same time, online discussions grew louder. A post went viral: director's daughter collapses during campus event. Under it, comments split into two groups: sympathy and suspicion. She was probably pushed too hard. She faked it for attention. The director would never allow favoritism. That last sentence carried more weight than facts. Meanwhile, Karen gave another statement. This time, more polished. She showed emotional instability before the procedure, she said. "We followed standard protocol." Standard protocol. A phrase that can erase almost anything. My mother reviewed it and gave a small nod. That is accurate. Accurate didn't mean correct. It meant defensible. And defensible was enough. 2 days later, a preliminary investigation meeting was held with external reviewers. This was the first time someone unfamiliar with the internal hierarchy asked direct questions. Was there informed consent? Silence. Karen answered first. She did not explicitly refuse. That was not the same as consent. The reviewer turned to my mother. "Did you require her participation?" My mother paused. "I encouraged her," she said carefully. "As a parent and faculty member, I wanted her to contribute like others." The phrasing was deliberate. Balanced. Safe. No one used the word pressure. No one used the word coercion. But in the notes, a contradiction began to form. Medical records said one thing. Staff statements said another. And the space between them was where accountability should have lived. The reviewer closed the file slowly. "We will continue investigation." But even as those words were spoken, decisions were already being made elsewhere, about wording, about reputation, about containment. And again, I was not part of the conversation. Only the explanation of me was. The investigation didn't move quickly, but it moved carefully, like something afraid of breaking the institution it was meant to examine. More documents surfaced. My medical history. Old emails. Internal notes from previous semesters where my name appeared beside words like exempt, reassigned, and administrative adjustment. Each file added weight, but not clarity. Because clarity would require admitting someone had been wrong. A senior reviewer finally asked, why were prior exemptions overridden? No one answered immediately. Then Karen spoke, quieter now. We were told she needed to be treated like any other student. The reviewer frowned. Even medically? Silence again. My mother leaned forward. If she is constantly treated differently, people will question fairness. There it was again. Fairness is a shield. Fairness is a weapon. Fairness is an excuse that always pointed away from responsibility. The reviewer wrote something down. The pen moved slower this time. Outside the room, the university continued functioning as if nothing had collapsed inside it. Classes. Exams. Announcements. My absence had become stable enough to live with. Karen's position began to crack first. The hospital ethics board reviewed the recordings from the donation bus. Her voice, my refusal, the restraint, the disregard for my medical file, it was all there, unfiltered. Her defense shifted immediately. I was under pressure from administration. I was following expectations set by the department. When confronted with the recording of her saying I was faking it, she stopped speaking for a long time. Then she said quietly, I didn't think it would go this far. That sentence didn't help her. It only confirmed she had never considered the consequences for anyone but herself. Meanwhile, My mother was called in again. This time, the questions were sharper. Did you instruct staff to proceed despite medical concerns? She didn't answer immediately. I expected professionalism, she said finally. I did not instruct harm. But expectation and instruction were no longer separate in the investigation's language. They were starting to overlap. For the first time, her composure slipped, not dramatically, but subtly. A pause too long. A breath held too tight. Because systems can protect people for a long time. Until they stop doing it. The final meeting was held in a quiet room with too many papers and not enough certainty. The conclusion was not dramatic. It rarely is. Karen's license was suspended pending full review. The university issued a formal violation notice for procedural misconduct and failure to respect medical exemption protocols. My mother's case was different. She was not removed immediately. She was relieved of administrative responsibilities pending investigation outcome. A softer sentence for a harder truth. A recommendation was made for institutional reform, mandatory medical verification, independent consent procedures, removal of faculty influence from student health participation. They called it reform. But it was really acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that what happened to me was not an accident of biology or emotion, but of structure. No one said my name during the final reading. But it was understood anyway. Because every rule they wrote afterward existed because I had been ignored before. And somewhere beyond the documents, beyond the meetings, beyond the careful language of institutions, the truth remained simple. I was not difficult. I was not dramatic. I was right, too late for them to deny it, and too late for me to hear it when it mattered.